She misses nothing. Okay, hi. Hi. Am I coming across clearly? Hi there. Hello. Hi. Do I have everyone's attention? How's it going? Is it good? Everyone, can everyone hear now? I want to introduce the bride and wrong event. Sorry. Um, we're going to start in about 5 minutes. If you'd like a refill, please get one now, and then we'll continue with the program. How's that? Then after Tom speaks, we're going to head all over to the museum to see that wonderful exhibit that our writer and curator, Will McCoy, in the back, has put together for you. So anybody for a refill? We're good? Okay. I'm Jim Crescitelli with the Winter Garden Heritage Foundation. I have the pleasure of working with some really great people, the aforementioned Will, and our executive director, Christy Karst Goman, who has, yeah. So we really appreciate this. We are humbled that so many of y'all have come to see this presentation by Tom and see our exhibit. Everything we do has to do with people's reactions to history around them, whether it's weather or citrus or just working in the area, going to school in the area, visiting the area. There are so many stories to be told in West Orange County through its history, and that's what we collect and preserve in our archive and in our museum presentations. So we thank you so much, truly. It's very emotional for me, from the bottom of our hearts, how much you guys support us. So give yourselves a round of applause. And without further me going on and on, I mean, I could for hours. I want to bring Christy up front to say hi and introduce Tom.
Hello. Thank you all for coming. Oh my goodness. As you all know, I'm Christy Karst Goman. I'm a louder. Oh, okay. And I need to be taller. There you go. Hi, I'm Christy Karst Goman. I am born and raised in West Orange County, so it is an honor to be the executive director of this foundation. It is an honor to have Tommy speak with us because, as we know, for over 23, 4+ years, he was guiding us through storms. So the amazing event and exhibit that Jim and Will have put together, he's going to talk to us about his experience while he was many times leaving Mitra with 3 kids on her own going, what am I going to do? So I want to thank you, but most importantly, I want to thank you all for supporting us. It's very important that our future generations realize that our community is one of, we were a citrus community. We have lakes, we have land, we have beauty that no one realizes when they move here anymore. So the fact that you all support us and help us in this initiative to spread the word about what our heritage is and our history is vital for future generations. So I asked you to, get involved, whether it's financially or just through the help of your hands. We need everything we can get because times are uncertain, but there's one thing that is not uncertain, and it's our history, because you can't change our history. So please, thank you for being here, and please help us keep the legacy alive. And now, with further ado, Mr. Tom Sorrells.
All right. How come it works for me and didn't work for you? Wow, that's loud. Can I be tall too? Thank you all for coming out. My name is Tom Sorrells. That's me up there. If you have questions for me, anything you ever want, you can reach me right there at talktotomsorrells@gmail.com. I feel short again. There you go. If you're also looking for me, there's my Facebook page. There you go. Talk to Tom Sorrells. I only have 60,000 followers. I need you all to go home tonight and follow me. Ladies and gentlemen, Linda Thompson is here. This lady dated Elvis. Is that you? Are you the one? It's a different Linda Thompson. It's the first thing I said to her. She said, "Hi, I'm Tom Sorrells." She said, "I'm Linda Thompson." I went, "Oh my God, you dated Elvis?" And she said, "No." I said, "Well, I'm from Tennessee." Can you tell? You can tell. All right. I am from Middle Tennessee, but I've been in Florida so long that I am local now. I've raised all my kids here. My poor wife has stayed with me everywhere we've gone. But you've loved Florida the most, yes? So far, so good. As we say all the time, we've been married 32 years. Secret to the long marriage is she won't leave. She will not leave. I'm the same jerk I've always been. She stays. I did not start out to be a meteorologist. I did not. I didn't think a thing about it. Didn't care about weather that much. Didn't know that that was even going to be a thing. I started out to probably be an attorney. I really thought there's attorneys in this room, no doubt. Who's an attorney? Not a single one. There's an attorney. That was going to be my job. I started competing in speech competitions when I was in high school. I was a freshman in high school, and I won a competition in extemp, and I brought the trophy home, and I went running out to my dad, and I went, "Daddy, look, Daddy, look, Daddy, look, I won." And he said, "What'd you win?" And I said, extemporaneous speaking. And he's like, "What is that?" And I said, "Well, they give me these topics. I choose 3 of them. I pick one of those 3. I've got 30 minutes to build a 4 to 7 minute speech. Hey, baby. What's up?" Jan, everybody, say hello. Yeah, come on in. So I showed my dad the trophy and I explained extemporaneous speaking to him, and he goes, "Oh, you mean you talk good?" And I said, "That's right, I talk good." And he said, "You know what that means?" And I said, "No." And he said, "This means you're going to be a lawyer." I was like, "Oh, does it?" And he said, "Yes." And so from that moment on, I thought I was going to become an attorney, only it's not what I really wanted. And when I was 18 years old, I suddenly got a job at a radio station, making $3 an hour playing country music. And I thought I was in heaven. So I changed my major from any thought of pre-law to broadcasting. And I didn't tell my dad. I told my mom. Let my mom tell my dad. I worked my way through college. I got my first TV gig. I became a meteorologist. I moved off to South Carolina, and I was home one Christmas, and I'm talking to my dad, and It's a Wonderful Life is on, and everything's kind of sad and melancholy. And I finally thought maybe this was the time to apologize. And I said, "Dad, I'm really sorry I didn't become an attorney like you wanted me to. I'm sorry I let you down if you're let down." He goes, "Oh, Tom, buddy, that's okay." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah. That's great." And I went, "Wow." And he said, "The way I see it, Tom, attorneys and weather guys have a lot in common." And I said, "Oh, really, Dad? What's that?" And he said, "Well, one of you's a born liar and one gets paid." I said, "Well, Dad, which one am I?" And he said, "You don't get paid much." Outside of my dad's lack of esteem for my gig, since he was all into agriculture, I have loved being a meteorologist. We moved here, not begrudgingly, but we were happy to get out of Detroit. We love Detroit. I say nice things about Detroit, but man, is it cold there 6 months out of the year. Always, always, always cold, always snowing. And when we moved to Florida, well, all of that changed. Our biggest weather concern was no longer the snow. My biggest weather concern for the most part became hurricanes. When I moved here in 2000, we had not had an eye of a hurricane come through. Yeah, I've been here 25 years. See, it seems like last week. I know, but it's a long time ago. And in TV years, that's like dog years. So actually, I was on the air for like almost a quarter of a century in real people time. That's like 250 years in dog years, in TV years. So hurricanes are bad. We've had them before, I know, but the eye of the storm had not come through here since 1960 with Hurricane Donna. Now, how many of you were around in 1960? Do you remember Donna? Were you here? Okay, yeah. If you were here, it was hellish. Only there weren't many people here. You were here. There were some, but there weren't like 2.3 million. Disney was not here yet. Hadn't even thought of it yet. 1960 was the last time one of these eye walls had ever come through here. Here's the numbers we're looking for this year. Okay? This is from our friends at Colorado State University. They're looking for 17 named storms, 9 of those to be hurricanes, and here's the number we really hate, this one, 4. 4 of those to be major hurricanes. We almost got walloped by a major hurricane last season with Milton. Remember that? In the 25 years that I've lived here, it's the only time I ever bought a generator. Mostly because I was going to be stuck at home with her. When I had someplace to go and had AC, I didn't worry so much about, did I? Where's the love, babe? I know. It's just terrible of me, terrible of me, terrible of me. Normally, when I talk to people, they either have one reaction in that they have amnesia and have forgotten how bad the hurricane seasons can be, or they live in a delusional state when they look at me and say, I'll be just fine. I lived through 3 major hurricanes in 2004. And I'm here tonight to tell you, you didn't. You did not. What you lived through with Hurricane Charlie, if you live here in this part of Orange County, was a pretty doggone strong tropical storm. Charlie was a little ball of hate. It only had a 10-mile area that had hurricane winds in it. So normally we say don't pay attention to where the eye goes. But with Hurricane Charlie, that mattered a lot. The eye tore right up through Kissimmee, then out to the east. So here in Winter Garden, over to Windermere, and just about the entire western side of Orlando, we had a really strong tropical storm. Winter Park had a hurricane. They got waxed. Kissimmee, St. Cloud, hurricane, dead on. 90-mile-per-hour winds at OIA, that's a hurricane. Here in Winter Garden, we didn't have that. All the trees that came down, all the damage we had, caused by a really strong tropical storm. Then follow Charlie with Hurricane Francis and Jean. Both of those eyes came right through here, right through Polk County. We were on the top side of them, the nasty side. But by the time they got to us, they were Category 1 hurricanes or weaker, strong tropical storms. You have not lived through a major hurricane yet. Worst case scenario has not happened. So anytime we have one of those Category 4 storms moving fast, like Milton, that's what I worry about for you. I worry about being without power. I worry about a little bit of flooding, but I worry about the worst case scenario, which hasn't happened. To start a hurricane, you need a cookbook. You need a few things. Mitra loves to cook. Doesn't follow the recipe all the time. She's better than most. But the cookbook has a sea surface temperature of 82 degrees. Sometimes we can squeeze in one at 80 degrees, but it only takes 82, and you need spin. You need the Coriolis effect to get things spinning around. You also need instability, and you have to have really a lot of moisture. The things that will kill a hurricane quicker than anything are cold water, dry air, and shear. So look at number 5 on our cookbook. You need low wind shear. If you're ever watching TV weather guys, which I don't care if you watch them now or not, just watch me on the web. Used to be all my big push of, hey, I don't care if you remember anything at all except my name is Tom Sorrells and I'm at Channel 6. Well, now I'm not at Channel 6. Now I'm Tom Sorrells, talk to Tom. Find me there. But low wind shear is what they'll show you on TV when they're showing the winds coming across from the west. High relative humidity is the opposite of the dry air coming off the coast of Africa. If you watch the TV weather guys or you see them online with that big orange swath of dry air, that's why that's important. If there's dry air aloft and there's wind shear, there's no hurricane. Problems across the inland areas with the hurricane, canopy damage. That means fallen trees coming through your roof, taking out your power. The other big threat, where we lose most of the people, is the heavy precipitation across the inland areas. If the storm motion is really slow, that's when we really get 30 inches of rain. How many of you were here in 2008? Do you remember Tropical Storm and Hurricane Faye? Oh my God. It rained 30 inches over the course of 2.5 days. It was god-awful. The wind wasn't bad at all. It was a big rain event. It was crazy. So you can get 3 to 30 inches of rain from any slow-moving hurricane. I live on a hill, a place called Windsor Hill. That's where I met Miss Christie. Where'd you go, Chris? Wow, she walked out on the show. When you leave me, I feel unloved. Yeah, I got you. Steve's here. Steve and I were neighbors up on top of Windsor Hill. And if you live on top of a hill here in Florida, you special. Because there aren't many hills around here until you get way out there. You told me now you live in Claremont over here. You guys live in Claremont. There's some hills over there that will save you from flooding too. The only problem is when you get 30 inches of rain, even if I'm up on top of Windsor Hill, I get into trouble with the ponding in my yard. You get 30 inches of rain, you get about 3 or 4 inches built up in the lawn, and then you get a good 50 or 60 mile per hour persistent from the north. All of a sudden, it starts to blow that water horizontally toward my house. So you're not getting flooding from above, you're getting flooding from the side that doesn't have time to wash all the way down the hill. So even on a small hill, like we have in Windsor Hill, we're still susceptible to horizontal flooding if we get 30 inches of rain. A lot of times when I'm giving these presentations, this question comes up a lot, and so I'm going to say it to you now. I'm going to say, where do you live? Ooh, this is where hurricanes hit. Where do you live? You live in Hurricane Central. Texas is about the same, and even the Outer Banks of North Carolina, all that area up through the Carolinas, those are all really, really bad areas for hurricanes. As you can obviously tell where they all hit and what goes on. Big one. Yeah, that's when I met Miss Mitra. Where do hurricanes hit? In the red zones and the yellow zones. Right there, part of Central Florida. Just about every hurricane, well, people would always say, but you live in Orlando. You're 60 miles off the water. Well, a hurricane is not a spot. It's not a dot. It's huge. And so the hurricane will cover up the entire state. But if the eye comes through your backyard or within 20 or 30 miles of your backyard, it's a different game altogether. Let's harken back to 2004 real quick. Remember, we had 4 hurricanes hit Florida in 44 freaking days. I couldn't sleep. It was awful. I would come home and not sleep, and I would get up at 8 a.m. and start doing my job. So that went on for like an entire week with Hurricane Charlie, and then it stopped for 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden, Francis and Jean came another, we spaced them out every 3 weeks. It was awful. I put this graphic on here for the crosshairs of Hurricane Charlie and Hurricane Jean. They landed 43 days apart back in 2004. History doesn't always repeat itself, but it rhymes. Here's the hurricane season of 2022. How almost exact does that look? A Category 4 storm, Ian, landing right there, basically at Fort Myers, and Nicole basically right in the same spot, 43 days apart, and do the crisscross a little farther east. They crisscrossed over Osceola County instead of Polk. But it's so close. So where do you live? You live within striking zone of both of those hurricanes. Now let's talk tornadoes. We have a huge tornado history here in Central Florida. Does anybody know where Tornado Alley really is? I mean, you've seen the Wicked Witch of the West and Dorothy and all that stuff in Kansas and Oklahoma, and it's actually Central Florida. Look at that. See that? We're a bullseye for tornadic activity. We always have been. Just nobody lived here. And we didn't know for the longest time. Seriously, the population explosion down here in the last 50 years has populated areas where we now know, oh my God, that thunderstorm produced a tornado. The difference is the big tornadoes happen somewhere else. The big ones. We just get more per square mile than anywhere else. See that? Per 10,000 square miles, we average 12.2 tornadoes a year. The big tornado alley areas that you talk about, your Nebraskas, your Kansases, your Texas, Oklahoma. Oklahoma gets about 9 per 10,000 square miles. We crush that. We get 12. Now, theirs are normally bigger. They get a lot more EF4s and EF5s. Most of ours are EF0s, 1s or 2s. But every now and then we get crushed. We'll have an El Nino winter, which brings us big tornadic breakouts at night. If you go through the museum and you get to the weather part and you see the tornadoes over here tonight, Kissimmee in 1998. Oh, who's this? Can I heckle them too? Hi guys, come on in. What's your name? Holly and John, welcome. I made fun of Aunt Jan when she showed up, but I didn't really know you, so I was going to spare you, but I'm not. Dude, it's no problem. I started early. I'm the most impatient dude you've ever met. I said, yeah, I'm ready. Let's go. Yeah, I'm supposed to take stage right now. I've been going like, how long have I been going? Too long? Is it dragging? Okay. So, tornadic activity, we actually get more per square mile than any other place in America, and most of those happen in Central Florida, and most of those are driven by the sea breezes. Any thunderstorm can produce a tornado. They're normally not monstrously big, but our sea breeze tornadoes produce a lot of tornadic activity. A lot. And so you live in Tornado Alley for the Chihuahua tornadoes, not the Bulldogs. Let's talk about the big killer. This is one of my favorite topics. I moved to Central Florida, and I fancy myself a tennis player. I do. I used to be able to move. I still play, just not as well. But my neighbors played, and so I went to play tennis with this dude, and he had like 3 or 4 people he played tennis with, and we're playing on like a Saturday afternoon, and all of a sudden, kaboom! And I'm like, whoa. Big Daddy's got to go. Let's go. Let's get out of here. And he's like, why? I said, it's lightning. We got to go. And they're like, you're leaving? And I'm like, that was thunder. That was close. Didn't you hear that? And they're like, yeah, but we're not going to stop playing. I'm like, I am. And they're like, seriously? Yeah, dude, you could die. People don't get that. A lot of people don't get that. The year I moved here was 2000. That year, we lost 10 people to lightning strikes in the state of Florida. 10. We've cut that in half for the most part in the last 20 years or so. And the reason we've cut it in half is because of education. It's hard for me to believe people grew up here their whole lives and don't run from lightning. But if you can hear it, you need to fear it. It's close. It's close enough it can kill you. If you can see it on the horizon, you need to watch it. But if you can hear it, get out. This is where lightning strikes. And again, I ask, where do you live? You live not in the lightning capital of the world, but in the lightning capital of North America. There are places in Africa and places in Central America that do get more lightning than us, but not in America. Not here in the United States, they don't. They do get a lot of lightning. And one time, recently, about 6 years ago, one of those places in Mississippi actually registered more lightning strikes that year than we did, but it's a title that we took back. Yeah, it's one of those things. It's not a title you want, really, but it's yours. Lightning is actually kind of little. Did you know that? It's not very big because you see it flash on the horizon. You think, do you think about the size of lightning? That's the size of a hole that we'll put in your pool screen. You know, that big around like that. Boom. But it's a killer. And it kills more people usually than any other weather event in Florida. Sometimes we'll get people who drowned. You get a big drowning episode. But for the most part, it's lightning. I'm just going to leave this here. What jumps out at you about that? That's a lot of dumb dudes right there, man. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? Playing golf, fishing, working outside, being stupid, telling me it's okay to play tennis in the lightning. No, it's not. I call it when people are tired after vacation and they're driving back up to the Ohio Valley and they're really tired and they're yawning. It's 11 o'clock and they ought to stop in Louisville, but they don't want to spend the money on the hotel in Louisville. They still think they can make it up all the way back to Ohio. And they crash, and we call that get-home-itis. They had get-home-itis. They were dying to get home, and they crashed their car, and they injured their family. Same thing with lightning. People are killed more with the approaching storm and the exiting storm than by the height of the storm. Because the height of the storm, when the rain's pouring down, lightning's flashing everywhere, you got no sense to get inside. But when you're outside mowing the lawn or playing one last round of golf, if you're from Ohio and you're down here visiting and you're on the golf course and there's only 2 holes left, you hear a rumble of thunder, you don't call off the dogs. You don't. You think, well, come on, let's get this in, let's squeeze this in, trying to save daylight, and you screw up and you get struck. I interviewed a lady whose daughter was struck by lightning last year on the show called Talk to Tom, oddly enough. It was my favorite podcast until I got bought out. I said to the lady, what happened? She said, well, they heard the noise and they went outside to see what it was. And I said, they heard the thunder? And she said, yeah, they heard rumblings. They went outside to see what was going on. And I'm like, lady, okay. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I can't save your kid. If you hear rumbles of thunder and you go to look, that's on you. Silly you. She almost ended up being one of these pink stats here, but she made it. So far this year, we're not losing many people, but it's early. It's early. And some of you aren't trying. I mean, we haven't lost anybody in the state of Florida. That's good so far. That won't hold up, of course. We'll lose someone, but it should not be 10 people. I think, due to this kind of speaking by not just me, but all kinds of meteorologists, I think those days are gone. All right, someone asked me, who was it? You, Elvis's girlfriend. Weren't you the one who asked me about why it doesn't rain in the afternoon anymore? What's your name again, ma'am? Nance. Not Nancy, but Nance. There you go. Nance was asking me about why it doesn't rain as much in the afternoon from the colliding sea breezes and why they're fewer and far between. Well, the weather's changing. And we do still get colliding sea breezes, and we do still get afternoon showers. But the pattern is changing just a bit. And here's why. As the temperature warms, the atmosphere expands. And so we end up going through more and more dry times. If the atmosphere is expanded, then it can hold more moisture. So we get colliding sea breezes like today. The sea breezes collided. No showers. No showers. Now, part of that is the karst rule. We'll talk about it more in a minute when I wrap this up. But until we get enough moisture and the overnight lows don't drop much, we don't get thunderstorms. So the moisture continues to build in the atmosphere can hold more. So it's not saturated. For every 1 degree increase in temperature, the atmosphere can hold 4% more water. So the sea breezes collide and it's not enough to trigger the water. Water's there if the atmosphere was more condensed, but it's not. It expands more. And what that leads us to is more rain when it does rain. So we end up with two effects. One effect is, man, it stays dry forever, like the month of April. This just went in the books as like, I think the 10th or maybe the 12th driest April ever. Ever. And like the almost 200 years we've been keeping records here, so stinking dry in Central Florida. So dry. Well, the atmosphere can hold more moisture. So it's not going to rain, even when you see the clouds. My daughter asked me the other day, is it going to rain today? No, it's just cloudy. These will burn off later, babe. It's not going to rain. And sure enough, it didn't rain. But when it does rain, Katie bar the door. You end up with copious amounts of rain when it does. So you go forever and ever and ever, it seems, with a drought, and suddenly you got a flood. More heavy downpours. 27% more in the southeast quadrant of the US of A. That's a bunch. In the northeast, it's 55% more. That's a lot of change. Our days are getting hotter later, too. 5 days later on average now. Not a big deal, really. You're used to 90-degree days here in Central Florida. But the way things are ramping up, down, going like the stock market. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, gradually on a plane up. And so now, 2020 compared to 1970, we had 5 more days a year, or at least 5 days later, for a 90-degree reading. That starts to become a bunch. And where it really affects us is risky heat days over the 90th percentile. Really a lot of hot days. Now, if you don't work outside, that's not a big deal. But if you're trying to cool your house, which we all are, it becomes a big deal. And where it really bites you is on the overnight lows. Because with more moisture in our atmosphere, it hangs on to what we call latent heat. The moisture holds the heat. Like your stovetop. Remember, you heat up the water stays hot a lot longer than the stove once you turn it off, because the water can hold the heat. It does the same thing in the atmosphere. So your overnight lows are not low at all. You don't have a chance to cool off. And a lot of the heat is being dumped into the ocean. So the ocean has absorbed a lot of our heat through the years, which leads us to stronger hurricanes, wilder conditions, and more damaging storms as time wears on. All right, I'm about done. You got to be about done with me. Did I go too long, Chris? I did. I don't care. Mitra's here. She didn't hook me off. I want to say congratulations to my dear friend Christy. Mitra said, just make sure you say our old friend Christy. Went, no, I'm not old. And Christy's not old. She's one of our dearest friends ever. We met Christy and Steve our first week in our neighborhood when we moved here back in 2000. So congratulations to you on this new gig. This is awesome, and thank you for having me here tonight. All right. If you have questions for me, I'm going to be here until they kick me out. But you can always write to me at talktotomsorrells@gmail.com, or you're going to follow me on Facebook, right? Okay. All right. A long time ago, I moved to South Carolina where I met Miss Mitra. And I'd been doing weather on TV for about 18 months at that time. I came out of Hopkinsville, Kentucky, Fort Campbell area. Any military guys here? Did you ever get stuck at Fort Campbell? Great part of the country, awful base. Whew. But that's where I got my start in TV. So it was great for me. But I was still young and learning. And when I got to South Carolina, they were like, oh, do you know the chief? And I'm like, what? The Native American chief. He does the weather too. And I'm like, no. And so I go live my life and I see the chief. He shops at the Piggly Wiggly. And so I see him and we talk and he's a nice guy. And I never ask him anything about the weather until one day it was hurricane season. And the chances were the hurricane was going to come our way. And I was, hey, Chief, what do you think about the hurricane coming? He goes, no problem. It'll turn. Should turn before it gets here. It'll turn. So I kind of put that feather in the back of my head, so to speak. And I go and I'm talking on TV and I'm like, I'm concerned, but the models seem to think, and I think it'll turn before it gets here. And sure enough, 3 days before it's supposed to make landfall, it turns. Chief was right. I'm like, the chief is onto something. So I talked to him a little bit more. Time goes on, and there's a threat of snow. And I'm like, Chief, what do you think about the snow? And he goes, I'd say 2 to 5 inches, 2 to 5 inches. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I go on TV that night, and I'm thinking, I'm going with the chief. And I don't know much about the snow, but I think it's going to snow 2 to 5 inches based on what I'm seeing on the moisture package tonight. And sure enough, 4.5 inches. And I'm like, Chief's my man. Big thunderstorms coming. Threat of big floods in the PD of Central South Carolina. And I'm like, Chief. It's supposed to be epic flooding this weekend. What do you think? And he goes, don't know. I said, what do you mean you don't know? And he said, don't know. Radio broke. You like that joke? That's an old man joke from way back. I love that joke. I have to be careful where I tell it now. But I still love the joke. All right. Any questions for Big Daddy Tom? Mitra, you have a question? Oh, my Karst rule. So I moved to town and I meet Christy and Steve, and we have kids the same age, and everybody in the neighborhood parties for birthday parties. And I go to all these stinking birthday parties at Christy's house, and there's always this old man in the corner, and his name is Roy. It's Christy's dad. And so even when I was 37, I had an old soul. And so I go sit with the old man because he's sitting there doing his thing in the corner. So I'm sitting with the old man doing my thing in the corner. He talks to me about weather. He talks to me about football. I love Tennessee. He thinks they suck. He's a Gator. And we talk. I just love that old man. Whenever I'm there, I go talk to Roy. Well, then Roy gets to talking to me about when's it going to rain. I said, well, supposedly, I think, and he's like the Indian chief, and this is not a joke. He's like, well, you won't really start to rain, Tom. You won't get a thunderstorm from the sea breeze until the temperature stays above 72 for 3 nights in a row. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah, we used to keep the thermometers in the orange groves, and we had to haul water back then. And when it got to be 72, we'd watch it. 72, we'd watch it. Third night, we didn't water because we knew it'd rain. And I'm like, wow. And I thought, holy cow, that's right. If you don't drop below 72, it means enough moisture's in the atmosphere. It's holding the heat, and it's going to trigger the rain. And I'm like, wowza, that's great. So whenever they would talk about when's the rainy season going to start, I pulled out the Karst rule. And I wrote it up on my graphics. But this is the Karst rule. Everybody's waiting for the sea breezes to start. Rainy season is supposed to start here on when? May 27th. But we dropped to 68 last night. It's not going to rain. And people are like, you sure? And I went, I'm banking on the chief. Roy. I'm banking on the Karst rule. And so that became my rule that I put into play. And I don't know that Candace, Jonathan, Samara, and Michelle are using it, but Julie Broughton probably will. So there you go. My team probably will. Any questions? Yes, ma'am. Michelle.
Having lived in different areas, is there a particular weather event that you'd like to follow the most or you find most fascinating?
It used to be tropical weather. Mitra and I met during Hurricane Hugo. So that's when I pointed out, hey, there's a special one right there. She was new at the TV station in South Carolina when I was old. I'd been there already a couple of years. And so everybody knew me, nobody knew her. And we lived through Hurricane Hugo together. So I had a fondness for tropical storms and hurricanes while I was in the Ohio Valley and while I was in Michigan. And then once I moved back down here, it was my specialty, I thought, until we started getting hit every third week. And I was like, this sucks. I'm not digging this anymore. And so people are like, it's your favorite thing, right? And I went, no, it's not. My favorite thing is winter time when I go home and eat dinner with my family and come back at 9 o'clock to do the 11. But I'm still attracted to tropical weather, even though I don't want it to hit me, and I now own the generator. Tropical weather is still more fascinating to me than snow. I don't care to forecast snow ever again. Thunderstorms are fun. I used to park my pickup truck down by Old Hickory Lake and watch lightning strike the water, which now I would kill my kids if they were doing that. But I'm still fascinated by lightning and tropical weather for the most part. Yeah. Got a question? Not Ed. Do you have a question? Okay, Ed.
Would you please explain dew point?
Okay, dew point is the temperature that we have to drop to under current present conditions for the air to become saturated and the dew to form. Now that changes, and so most of the time we don't talk about dew point on TV because it's confusing as hell to people. Most of the time we just talk about relative humidity. That's easier for the layman to understand. But the dew point is the temperature under the current pressure that the temperature has to drop to for the air to become saturated and dew to form. It really becomes important to people who have respiratory issues. If you have oxygen, my sister was on oxygen the last 3 years of her life, the dew point suddenly became what she would talk to me about. How much moisture is in the air? What will the temperature drop to when I can't breathe? Because if the dew starts to form, you have to crank your oxygen up even more, get someplace drier so it doesn't screw you up. So people with respiratory issues care about the dew point. Why did you ask? Why do you care? You just wanted to know? Okay. I thought you had a reason. I thought there was you're in great shape. You don't need it. Yes.
Question is, here in Central Florida, I've seen you on TV. Prior to that, have you ever covered in the field where we see many of, today's weather where they're out there in the condition?
I used to do live shots all the time. When I first met Mitra, I did the whole weather forecast outside. My chroma key wall was outside because Tom Sorrells with the weather outside. And those morons kept me out there doing lightning. And I was dumb enough to let them. And people would call me, get inside. I'm fine. I'm going to be okay. I'm not going to die. This tall stuff. I could have died at any moment. And if I run into Bill Christian, I'm going to punch him in the mouth. My old general manager. But that was basically the only times I was ever outside. Back in 1995, we were in Columbus, Ohio. I worked for anybody from Ohio? Where are you people from? Okay, where are you from? Columbus, Ohio. I worked at Channel 10, WBNS 10 TV. You remember that? Joe Holbrook, remember him? Joe was my guy. Loved him so much. He was a wonderful human being and taught me a lot. And I worked there at WBNS 10 TV, and they sent me to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Only time I've ever been to the Outer Banks. We talked about this the other day. In August of 95, I went to cover Hurricane Felix. And it was one of those hurricanes back when TV stations had a lot of money. And they were able to cover weather anywhere in the country through a satellite. And I was doing live shots back to Columbus, and the hurricane turned and missed. And then so I just came home. So I did like 4 live shots and came back to Columbus. That's the only time I've ever been sent out live in a hurricane. Mitra reported from outside the station in Hugo. How was that, Mitra? That was good for you, right? Yeah, the kids love the video. They do. Then Mitra wised up and got out of TV. Any questions? Who are you? What is your name? I can't really see you. What is a microburst? People get mad when we would cover damaging weather. And a microburst is basically the drop of cold air at the top of a thunderstorm. Thunderstorms build up, build up, build up. And the higher you go in the atmosphere at this level, the colder things get. You drop a temperature of about 3 degrees for every 1,000 feet you go up. So you get way up in the atmosphere where Stevie flies. What's the temperature up there? Minus 80?
Yeah, minus 50.
Easy. It's crazy. I mean, it's really super cold at the higher levels of the atmosphere. And you wouldn't think that, but it is. So you get a thunderstorms built up to 50 or 60,000 feet. All of a sudden, it's really cold at the top. And that air starts, once it gets up here, it flattens out and starts to drop down the other side. And it'll cut loose. And instead of being a rotating column of air, people always say, it was a tornado. Look, it ripped off my roof. And you look at what happened, everything's blowing that way. That was a microburst. That was a tornado that collapsed. Excuse me, not a tornado, but a thunderstorm that collapsed. And all the cold air rushes straight down one side of the thunderstorm, hits the ground and spreads out. So instead of it all twisting, everything will be from a point flat away from that point. Everything will be blown in almost one direction rather than torqued. So when the Weather Service comes out to look for damage, if something happens in Windermere and you come out, the trees are like twisted at the top and twisted around, that's torquing wind. But if it's all laying flat in one way, and that's all one way, you go for like a football field and it's all that way, that was a microburst. Collapsing wind out of a big thunderstorm. Okay, I've already forgotten. ORS? OSR. Who's here for OSR? Anybody? Well, it doesn't matter. I screwed them up then because they're our sponsor tonight, so thank you very much. Alicia Spears Realty is here. Thank you, Alicia, for sponsoring tonight. And our guy over here, Dustin Stanley from Stanley Roofing. Thank you so much for sponsoring this event. See, I worked in TV for so long that if you sponsored me, you get called out. Yeah, because it mattered in TV. So thank you for sponsoring this event tonight. Any other questions, guys? No? Yeah, man. Oh, the attorney wants to ask something.
What's the forecast, for the hurricane season coming up this summer?
Well, I led with that early on. There's supposed to be 17 named storms, 9 hurricanes, 4 major. And the reason that's just above average. Last year they went like crazy wild and said, we're going to have like 25 named storms. And we ended up with fewer. So they kind of dialed it back. And the guy, when I say they, I mean Dr. Klotzbach at Colorado State University. I almost always ride with him because Dr. Gray at Colorado State invented the hurricane seasonal forecast. And they do a specific number. Whereas NOAA, who played catch up on the seasonal forecast, will say we'll have somewhere between 15 and 21. Colorado State goes 17, goes ahead and names the number. It's the difference between an educational institution that can name a number and government that can't figure it out. They always go, you got a window here. Doing your taxes, you might, it's a window. And so I don't like that. I like Colorado State. They invented it. They're the best at it. And Dr. Klotzbach is the bomb. He looks like Doogie Howser to me. And he looks, you've seen him. Meecher knows him. The guy has got to be 45 now. But still, whenever time I look at him, I see a kid. I see a child. I see the little boy I knew 20 years ago when he's fresh out of grad school and he's 23. And I'm like, you're just a boy. What are you doing here? But he's a genius boy. Really smart guy. So it'll be close. He might be off by 4 or 5, but he won't blow it by like 10. The weirdest time was after 2004 when we had such an active season. And I was interviewing his mentor, Dr. Gray, about the season. I said, Dr. Gray, man, you're calling for like 22 storms. I mean, that's crazy. And he had a weird cadence to his speaking. He goes, well, I could have gone more. And sure enough, that's the year we went nuts, burned through every letter, and went to the omegas, alpha, omegas, up through the Greek alphabet. So they don't normally miss it by much. They're almost always close to dead on. And it'll take a while. Like any day now, this is May. In 8 out of the last 10 years, hurricane season has started in May. So we may pop an early storm in the next 3 weeks. It'll be ugly. It won't be a monster storm, but it could be a named tropical event. And then we go through a lull, 1 or 2 in June, and then July may be quiet. Then all of a sudden, August starts to ramp up. Something like 75% of all major hurricanes happen after August 3rd. So it's almost always a late season catch up. And last year was. We went through a large part of the summer with nada after we had one in July. We had one when we were on vacation over at the coast, the Gulf Coast. But after that, nothing for the longest time. And then, boom, they started coming. All right, I know I'm going long. Any other questions? Okay, so they're going to open. We're going to open up next door. It's free to go.